Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to start off, of course, with our favorite guy who is so wonderful, and that's Darwin Porter. Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you, ANITA. Is it really true we're going to be on for an hour?
Yes, we are. I'm so excited about that. So take a deep breath.
Oh, my goodness. I always run out of things to say after 10
right.
minutes. You know,
I don't think so,
to
Darwin.
Talk to you. We've suffered with you on a terrible, terrible heat wave. Once we were the same temperature index of Dubai. But right this morning when I woke up, I felt a cold wind blowing in from Nova Scotia. So.
Oh, yeah, right. So what is the temperature there in New York?
Well, I haven't seen this morning. It's been about 95, which for us is pretty tough. Yeah. I think as a true Floridian, I was used to that, but now I'm living in the north.
I was going to say, people used to complain about Florida. Some people tell me it's hotter up north than in Florida.
That's right. But, New York with all this skyscrapers and sidewalks seems to heat up quite a bit. I want to do something a little different today. First, I want to lead in, as you know, when I was 21, the Miami Herald, for reasons known only to themselves, assigned me the territory of the Florida Keys based in Key West. So I spent a lot of time running up and down the Florida Keys. But every week, the city editor demanded that I do a human interest feature story for the Sunday paper. So in honor of that old assignment, I would like to talk about a few things that I would have done feature stories on had I still had that old job. And this is unusual. We've never done a story like this before, but it is a young man, young at 42, a young man in New York who is now called the Sperminator. And his name is Ari Nader, like Ralph Nader, and he is the world's most prolific sperm donor. He's right now got 10 babies in the oven, and he's just become the father of 8 more in the Bronx, up in Harlem, here on Staten Island, out on Long Island, down in Maryland, and he has invaded Florida, not Boca Raton, but Disney World, Orlando.
So tell me how that works, Darwin. How do you become a sperminator?
Well, he did because the New York Post, which is running headlines that I would have been fired. I used to be a headline writer on the Miami Herald, and I would have been fired if I'd written one of the headlines that the New York Daily News and the New York Post, they're the two tabloids of New York. He became famous when a reporter, he did a story on him in the New York Post called Great Balls of Sire, S-I-R-E. And they like to play on puns. And apparently, you've heard of Father of the Year. Well, I would nominate him for Father of the Decade. He's I'm not sure what the world's record on fatherhood is, but right now he has, what did my mother used to say, 10 in the oven right now. And these are women he does not know. Now, he does, his name, by the way, is Ari Nader, I told you, and Nader. And he doesn't work in a sperm bank, and but he was exposed in this article in the New York Post. And ever since that time, he's been getting women around the world have been writing in for his sperm. And he incidentally is the father of 3 children himself, ages 4, 7, and 14. And now he's not, I've seen his picture. He's not an exceptionally, he's not Robert Redford in 1960. what we used to call an average Joe. He has blue eyes and curly hair. He's rather thin. And I saw a picture of him holding up one of his babies, who's also blue-eyed and got his nose and certainly a full mouth. And as I said, he's married. But once this story broke in the New York Post, he's getting enormous requests from women around the world. Oddly enough, the two countries for his sperm is mostly requested are Israel, number one, and England. And now he's sent so much sperm to Tel Aviv that the Israeli Minister of Health has banned him as a sperm donor. And to my knowledge, that's the first time that has ever happened. They did it on the grounds that sperm donors in Israel have to be anonymous. And this man is on the way to becoming a legend. I just found this and such a remarkable story. He's just getting all of these letters. And now, he does not go to a sperm bank, and the way of that he contributes his seed is a little bit unorthodox. It often happens in the men's room of Starbucks.
This is getting, I'm sitting here hysterical. I'm just not making any noise. This is quite a story. I love this.
He prefers the woman to arrive with her mother. And he says that shows that the woman is family oriented. And they chat a bit. And then he goes to the men's room and takes one of those. So instead of a cup of latte, the woman leaves. Of course, they put a container over it. Leaves with we don't know. I won't say a cup full of sperm. That would be an exaggeration, but adequate to do the job. And so far, no one really knows how many babies he has fathered. But as I said, right now there are 10 in the oven. So he's really, I wish I knew the world's record. I think it was held by some man in Egypt a long time ago, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, I think he was surprised that he was actually banned from Israel because I think the reason they want all sperm donors to be anonymous.
Well, I have to tell you that this is the wildest story. And you're telling me that it's a feature in one of the newspapers in New York?
Of course.
Right.
I mean, my God, it was more than a feature. It was announced on the front page with Second Coming headline.
Oh, God.
You know, in that print, both the News and the New York Post now run what we call in journalism Second Coming. You know,
the Second Coming gets good.
The size of the headline to announce the Second Coming. He certainly stirred up a lot of controversy. He is a mathematics professor at City College, New York, and has apparently all sorts of requests. There's some requests that are arriving on his doorstep that we can't say over public radio, but he prefers to be faithful to his wife and doesn't actually implant the seed himself. Isn't that said diplomatically?
Yes, it is. I have a lot of questions, and this is, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, I hate to interrupt you, but I have so many questions. So, has anyone seen the children that his sperm has created?
Yes. They're wonderful. I've not seen them in person. I've not seen them in person, but I have seen one of his baby boys in pictures of them. Well, the boy looks wonderful. He has the same blue eyes. He has his father's nose. He has his full lips, and he's been doing this enough. Apparently, these are all very, very healthy babies. And as I said, the man he's not bad looking, but you wouldn't stop in the street and ask to photograph him. But rather thin, but apparently he's already got. He's been doing this for quite a while. Some people, instead of calling him the sperminator, call him Seed Superman.
Seed Superman. And so wait. I have too many questions. You have to just give me a chance here because this is going crazy for me. So I thought that when someone gives sperm, provides sperm, that it's not really known. The person's never meet this person, that it's all anonymous, but that's not true in this case. And there are couples who are using his sperm. This is not, there's, so this is amazing. So will he want to see the children that his sperm created?
Yes, he's not opposed to it, but that depends on the mother. But you're right, sperm donors at sperm banks. Now remember, this is a latte coffee cup in the stars.
Right.
I couldn't believe that. First, I didn't know that was a possible way. I thought you needed more controlled conditions.
Right.
And I didn't know the lifespan of sperm. My mother never taught me these things.
Nor mine.
But apparently they've been so successful that now there are several letters that he's getting from people that we can't discuss over public radio. As his fame has spread, he's getting a lot of requests, including making porno films. But he's rejected all of them. He just wants to plant his seed around the world, and they're coming in now. The New York Post is not an obscure newspaper. And the story was so popular, it's just going around not only the country, but the world. I don't know why so many women in, I don't know England either, in Israel. He's fathered so many children in Israel. And I did find out the average age of the women contacting him in Israel was 41 years old. So these are not young girls in Israel.
Okay, so I have some more questions. I have to ask you these questions. You're so smart. Do you think that this is a whole new, I want to call it an avocation, a profession for men? Could they start becoming sperminators? And how much money does he get per cupful?
Well, I'll tell you, I hope it doesn't, because I agreed with your wonderful husband about I remember his writing about the overpopulation threatening the world.
Right, overpopulation.
I don't think Mr. Nader is a very good ad. I mean, the world is becoming overpopulated. As someone said, Miami cannot tolerate 75 million people. And in this century, this is going to be a problem. So some people object to shall we say, his spreading his seed around the world. But apparently, in a few cases, the husbands of these women, for reasons known to them, cannot reproduce. And so he's been like a standby dead in an emergency. But most of the women that I understand do not have a working husband.
Well, wait. So that was my next question. I wonder how many women are not married and do not have a male partner and just want to have babies.
From what I've gathered, nearly the majority of them. Anyway, so one country, Israel, has banned him. So, but he's still available for. And by the way, he doesn't charge for this service.
What?
He donates it for free.
Oh, now that we didn't. Oh, that should have been told first. You are kidding. So he's not doing this for as to make money. I know he has that position you did, but he just does this for free.
It may be an ego. Maybe it's an ego trip, but that would be assigning a harsh motive to him. I guess he just wants mothers who want children to have children. Remember, he has 3 of his own, and he makes his living because he's a professor at City University. So they're fairly well paid. Anyway.
So wait a minute. No, I'm not letting you off so easily. My question is, would you have done this for somebody if they wanted, when you were younger?
No, I don't.
No, wait.
I don't believe it.
Wait. So let's say it was a wonderful couple. They couldn't have a baby they wanted to, and you had good sperm. Would you have done that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I sort of agree with your husband that
Okay.
I just read too much about overpopulating the world and this idea. I remember when I went to Egypt, I found that the men there viewed having a lot, like 18 children at one time. That would be viewed as a document to their great manhood. And of course, they were overpopulating the country. And the last time I was in Cairo and I drove out in what used to be fertile land, and now it's all apartment buildings, and Egypt is going to have to be importing more and more of its food stuff. And this doesn't look too good for the future of the world. So
yes. Okay.
I think that population, I will be up in Jupiter, but the world, many people now alive are really going to have to face overpopulation, and it's going to be a serious problem. So I think Israel, I'm sort of sympathetic with them. They said enough is enough, but yet you have to give in to a woman's desire to want to have children. I mean, I think nature built in that desire in women to keep the population. It's just that we've done a hell of a good job. As you know, that I've traveled the world all my life, and the one thing that I remember most, believe it or not, was not the pyramids or the Great Wall of China, but the miles and miles of starving children around the world. It's a very sad sight. I don't want to put him down. I mean, he is performing his service, and he's not doing it as a profit-making thing. Although, if some scriptwriter is, I think it would make a great movie.
I do too. I think this is unique. I know that you always give us great information, but of course, I don't get those tabloids, but I love this. This was a conversation I'm going to have, and I have to just say that before you get off this, let me tell you something. You know that we do the Boomer Expo twice a year, and so yes. I wanted to have a grand finale because sometimes we end at 4, but sometimes around 3, people get a little sleepy and they just kind of don't want to stay any longer. So I decided we would have a grand finale, and I've hired 3 gorgeous men who are going to do their little. It won't, they won't go all the way, but they're going to do dancing, and we're going to have them there from 3:15 for about half an hour. What do you think of that?
I think that's great.
They're not giving any sperm. They're not giving any sperm.
Yeah. But when you say 3 men, never follow it with little.
Oh, I'm not little. They're not. I saw them. You can go on the line. It's Labare. Labare is the name. There's actually a nightclub where they perform, but they're going to come and perform for our sleepy attendees who want to go home. They won't want to go home once these guys come. So I'm making this announcement right now. Nobody has heard this yet, but I just had to tell everybody. It seemed like it was all in the same vein. The same.
I wish I could be there.
I know you do.
But I'm mired down in my own thing. Now, I want to change the subject to a very different man who's never had any children, and he's world famous. His name is Ron Reagan Jr.
Oh, I see his commercials. Yes.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. You've asked about his commercials.
Oh, I've seen his commercials. I love them. He says that's right. He's not going to hell either.
Yes, he says, first, he is a spokesperson for Freedom from Religion, a foundation.
Yes.
And it is a belief that our forefathers had in separating religion from the state government. And now, oddly enough, it was his father, Ronald Reagan, Sr., who brought on more than ever the tie-in between religion and government and the rise of the moral majority, so-called, led by Jerry Falwell, who is now dead. And so it's interesting that his son is taking a very, very different position. If you haven't seen the commercial, they're very interesting. First, he is now 56 years old, and I cannot believe the passage of time. I still think I've written a lot about him over the years, and I met him twice, oddly enough, in Palm Beach. He lost his wife. A lot of people don't know this, but he was married to a woman named Doria, who was a psychologist, and she was 7 or 8 years older than him. And she died in 2014. I didn't read about that anywhere, but I know she's dead. And now she was religious, but she was a Buddhist. And now a lot of people have said, who've seen this commercial of separation of church and state, that poor Ron Reagan would turn over in his grave to learn that his son was doing these commercials. Well, when Ron Jr. was 12 years old, he went to his father and said, I won't be attending church with you and Nancy anymore because I am a devout atheist. So his father learned that his son was, and he also found out that so was Patty Davis, which is his older sister. Patty Davis written about, and we've had various feuds. In fact, readers of the BOOMERTIMES know about the feud I've had with Patty Davis. But she really was opposed to most of what her father did. And so she adopted the name of her mother. She had it legally changed to Patty Davis. Her mother was the actress Nancy Davis, an MGM starlet. And so Ronald Reagan has had trouble with his children, and they made it clear at the funeral where Patty and Ron got up, and they both announced at this very religious ceremony of Nancy that we do not believe in the supernatural. So I think they stunned. I've actually just only yesterday was writing about Patty Davis again. She'll love it. Because I'm doing a book on Hugh Hefner, the founder of Playboy magazine. Oh, yes.
Is that your next book?
And yes, I'm coming to the end of it.
Wow.
I call it Empire of Skin. And
good.
It is a hell of a story. It's not, you might think it's about bunnies or something like that. Now, ironically, what I've been writing about the last 2 days is Ronald Reagan Sr. declared war on Hugh Hefner and tried to shut down Playboy.
Is that right?
So it became one of the great censorship battles of in the 80s, and that more or less Hefner won the right to, under the First Amendment, it had to go to the Supreme Court.
Is that
but Ronald
right?
Reagan really tried to shut him down. So I've been writing about Reagan, but I'll tell you how the daughter, and I'm running the picture in my new book, Patty, got even. And what did she do? Nancy and, well, Reagan was a bit gone at the time with Alzheimer's, but they picked up a copy of Playboy, and guess what? On the cover was a picture of their daughter, but her breast was not exposed because they hired an African-American man to cover her breasts with his big hands.
I believe I saw that. That's interesting. That was quite a cover.
Well, not only that, but I've seen I never saw it at the time it was released, but I've been going through the Playboy files, and I found a video that Patty did, and her father and mother saw it. It was called Playboy Celebrity Centerfold, and in it, she cavorts in some lesbian scenes and ends with a solo masturbation depiction. You know, Anita, it sounds like I'm making all this up.
Right, this is preposterous.
I swear. So poor Reagan really, his children did not adopt his morality. Let's put it that way. And so anyway, as money becomes available, Reagan Jr. is doing these commercials now.
Oh, wait. I have another question before you go on. So did he and his sister inherit money from?
Yes.
Enough money that they didn't have to work?
That's right. All of the money from Ron Sr., and there were a few million there, because actually, you know, he never really, I wrote a book about Reagan in Hollywood, and he ended up his Hollywood career playing a killer in a movie called The Killers. The first time he played a villain, and he and Nancy had $9,000 in the bank, and the last time I saw Reagan alive, I went to see a show I drove up just to see him. He was doing a burlesque show in 1964 in Las Vegas. Now, I don't mean he took off his clothes. He was the MC for the strippers.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
You know, if you didn't have the internet and couldn't look this up, I mean, someone wouldn't believe me, would they?
This is amazing. And you do. That's what's so great about your books. You have all the history and all the resources, and what you come up with is not to be believed. Just what you said today is not to be believed. But so Hugh Hefner, going back to that, you are going to be touching on an awful lot of very famous people in that book, aren't you?
Oh my goodness, yes! It's amazing. Even famous people who pose for Playboy, but I see Hefner more as a major cultural figure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he termed himself the father of the sexual revolution that occurred in America in the 60s and 70s. And he had many, many battles along the way. He was often hauled into court, but he was a great champion of the First Amendment. And so it's more than a lot of bunnies, although there were a lot of bunnies too. And the attacks on him were just amazing. So in a way, I view him as a great cultural figure. Now, I'll tell you a secret, providing you tell nobody. And here's
Should we shut the radio off right now?
Actually, through Danforth Prince, my publisher and your dear friend,
yes,
he got a call from Playboy. I thought it might be some objection to my upcoming book. You know, that's often happened when a book of mine is announced. I get threats from lawyers.
Right.
Katharine Hepburn, for example, I reminded her lawyers that Katharine Hepburn was dead and dead people cannot sue for libel. But that's another story.
And I know you've gotten threats from Trump when you wrote, too. Yes,
and Merv Griffin's son. But dead people cannot sue for libel. So, anyway, the Ron Reagan, I want to go back to Ron Reagan's son, though. There was something else that was timely. Donald Trump, who has also been on the cover of Playboy. I'm running that story.
Good.
He was a bunny aficionado. But Reagan has gone on the air. He's doing, he often appears on MSNBC. And,
yes.
And, he had a program of his own. And now, normally, Donald Trump would go after someone who attacks him on the air the way Ron Jr. does. but I think he's laying off because Reagan father is such a symbol to many of his supporters. I think he doesn't want to cross that bridge. But just recently, I wrote down what Ron Jr. was saying. He called Trump a deeply damaged human being, a danger to the world. He said the Electoral College has sort of vomited this thing, and it landed in the Oval Office.
That's really...
Ron Jr. said he's emotionally unstable. He's a sociopath. He's a malignant narcissist. I must say this, Reagan Jr. is, as you know, his father was called the great communicator. Well, the son he's quite articulate. And so far, Mr. Trump has taken all that air abuse. Now, he wouldn't take it from Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders. Incidentally, Reagan Jr., he may have voted for Hillary Clinton, but he threw his back into Bernie Sanders during the recent campaign. And in 2004, he stunned the Democratic convention by coming out. He was the son of Ronald Reagan Jr., speaking to the Democratic convention. Just amazing.
I want to ask about him. And so, did you say? And he was married, and he lost his wife. Yes. You said his wife died. Does he have children?
No, they had no children. Now, there was a first when Mr. Reagan was in office because he had to face rumors that his son was gay, and those stories still persist. What happened is Ron Jr. dropped out of Yale and became a ballet dancer with the Jeffrey Ballet Corps in New York. In fact, I was at the performance that Ron and Nancy attended. Was seeing their son dance ballet for the first time. Now, Reagan announced to the world that Nancy and I have checked out our son, and he is all man. Now, that infuriated a lot of the ballet corps. Not all ballet male dancers are gay.
True.
Baryshnikov is a great example of that. And they thought Reagan was saying if you are a ballet dancer, you have to be gay, which is not true, of course.
Right.
Of course, some of them are, but not all. So that was a real controversy at its time. And he did meet Doria, and we don't know what kind of relationship they had, and I'm sure that a lot of the secrets between them will go to their grave.
But wait a minute, let me ask you this question. So Ron is not the son, though, of Nancy Reagan?
Yes.
Is that? Yes, I don't know why I didn't realize that.
Yeah, just a quick review. They had a daughter, Maureen, who ran for and lost a Senate seat in California, and she died of cancer. That was their only, at the time, her mother was Jane Wyman, the famous Oscar-winning actress. I'm sure you remember Jane Wyman.
Yes.
Brilliant actress. And they adopted a son named Michael. I think he lives in Florida.
Yes, and he is not. He's not liberal, right?
And he's although adopted son, he follows a very right-wing agenda.
Yes, I know.
And so he totally differs from, and the other two. Jane Wyman. There was another daughter born, but she lived to Jane Wyman, but she lived for only one day, and she died. And then Ron Sr. first came Patty. He was getting ready to marry Doris Day, who's still around. Good old Doris, she's still around, singing Que Sera and Sentimental Journey. But then Nancy became pregnant with Patty. And in those days, a woman star getting pregnant was, as Ingrid Bergman learned, was a career destroyer. So they rushed into a marriage, and he had to withdraw his proposal from Doris Day, and he was the real gentleman and married Nancy. And apparently, it became a great love affair. It developed into a great love affair. But then they had these two rebellious children who actually have inherited all their money. But Reagan Jr., even when his father was alive, his father was infuriated when his son went on TV and called religion a delusion, going hand in hand with ignorance, stupidity, and scientific illiteracy, especially in its belief, held by millions, that the earth is only 6,000 years old. Wow. So the father must have had an extra bourbon after hearing this.
But he didn't disown him. He didn't disown him. He just turned his. But wait, I have to ask you, because I know you wrote the book on Reagan. He was not just a goody two shoes. He had quite a life himself.
Yes, he was. Before all this moral majority took over, you know, and it's documented. Nancy was called the Hollywood Queen of Fellatio. She had numerous affairs. I mean, she wanted to marry Clark Gable. She had an affair with Spencer Tracy. I mean, she was already 30, you know, so she'd been around the block. As another biographer said, Nancy's phone was handed around a lot in those days. And then Reagan, even his boss, Jack Warner, said Reagan is more of a swordsman around Warner Brothers than Errol Flynn. So before Ron and Nancy settled down, they had quite a life, as documented in my book, Love Triangle,
right.
The triangle being Jane Wyman, of course. And I wanted to present a different side of Reagan. I got a lot of heat on that, because some people, you know, they see this aging Reagan and aging First Lady, but Ronald and Nancy were once young.
Yes. And you covered it well.
Good time.
Yes, you covered it well. And it's ironic, isn't it, that people like that then turn the other way?
Because actually, so many letters came in that I got said, was Ronald Reagan really a movie actor?
No kidding. No kidding.
Yes, he was. Yes. You can still catch him on the Late Show.
Yeah, so that's true. So let's go back to this Ron Reagan. So what does he really want? I know he wants to have his say, but are you covering him in the Hefner book?
In the what book?
Yeah, Hugh Hefner, right.
In the Hugh Hefner book.
Yeah, are you going to cover him in the Hugh Hefner book?
No, because he doesn't. He was never connected with Playboy. But I will be writing about Patty Davis. Because
she was the cover. I have to tell you something you don't know. I'm so glad that you're doing this on Hefner. Do you know that Playboy was one of the best things that Bill and I had? We never missed an issue. The articles were very intelligent. We loved that. It helped romance when you read through that. I loved Playboy. Yes. I thought it was a wonderful magazine.
I started reading it when I was 13 years old,
right, and
bought it with Marilyn Monroe on the cover. Actually, even today, it's now taken over by one of his sons, Cooper, by his second wife. But his daughter was running it until 2009, and so it's been passed on. Of course, it's nothing like what it used to be. But anyway, I'll soon be coming to the end of Hugh Hefner, and it has been, it's been a fascinating story because it involves some of the most famous people, the most famous of all Americans. I mean, there were very few people that he seemingly didn't get involved with, either as friends or enemies, and it was just such he really did change American life and culture, but he's been an exhausting man to document.
Well, let me ask you this then. When did Penthouse? Is that after Hefner? That was a second kind
yes.
of. Mm.
It came as a direct spinoff, and it decided Hefner was daring, but it became even more daring. And then Hustler magazine came along with Larry Flint, who is still alive, by the way. And it, shall we say, went where no angel ever dared go before.
True. But
and after that, there's no censorship. These men did play a record in history because they virtually eliminated censorship in this country. But now let's see, we've got a little more time, and running on with my stories of human interest. And
they've been pretty good, Darwin. I tell you, I'm taking some deep breaths here.
I recently wrote you a note to inform you that Queen Elizabeth is going to host another royal wedding. And, of course, many of us saw the Duke and Duchess, the recently renamed Duke and Duchess of Sussex.
Yes.
I never heard of that title before. and of course, this had created massive publicity around the world because of the biracial overtones of this marriage to Meghan and the African American people represented at her wedding. But now a wedding likely to be even more controversial is coming up, as I wrote you in that note. Lord Mountbatten. Now, this is the grandson. This is not the famous Lord Mountbatten, who was the mentor of Prince Charles and a World War II hero and killed by Irish terrorists. But this is down the line. And for many years, Lord Mountbatten, today, he's 55 years old, and he was married for a while to Lady Penny Mountbatten, and they have 3 lovely daughters. But they got a divorce, and Lord Mountbatten was in Verbier, Switzerland, one of my favorite old hangouts when I used to write a book on Switzerland. And he met this charming, dashing young man named James Cole, and he wants to marry him. And the marriage is going ahead this month, and it will be the first ever gay wedding. Now, many British monarchs have been gay, but they didn't marry them back then. You know, they had them as lovers on the side. So, but this will be the first, because same-sex marriage is now illegal in England. And Lord Mountbatten said that Prince Edward and his wife Sophie, you know, Prince Edward is the son of Elizabeth and Philip.
Yes.
And he's had a lot of gay rumors all of his life. And apparently the 4 of them, James, Lord Mountbatten, Sophie, and Edward, are all now great friends hanging out together. And Mountbatten said he wants to give James the stable life that he thinks he deserves. But here's a first for me. Guess who's going to give the groom away? Lady Penny herself.
This is good. No, this is good, right?
And
amazing.
The 3 daughters are going to be the bridesmaid to welcome their new stepfather into the family.
Isn't this amazing?
It is not known. At this point, it's not been announced by Buckingham Palace if the Queen will attend, although in her last opening statement at Parliament, she went out of her way to attack any discrimination based against people, as she said, on the basis of their race, their faith, their gender, their disability, and their sexual orientation. So,
yes,
the Queen,
yes,
the Queen
she's getting ready. She's getting ready, right?
Yeah, the Queen has long been known to be a champion of gay and lesbian rights. So,
you know, Darwin. Before I don't want you to leave before I say this about the Queen. You ought to do a book on her. I'm sure there's been so many things. She is absolutely a fantastic woman, isn't she?
how ironic. 2 publishers have asked me to do it.
I think you should do it. I think you should do it.
I'm pretty, we'll talk about it another time.
Okay,
but
okay.
I got a pretty strong commitment, but we still have, I think, a few minutes. I want to come up with another.
Okay.
Now, this story concerns our present First Lady, Melania.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
I have never heard this before. Now, Getty Images is the largest photo rental agency in America. They put their copyright on many things, including Michael Jackson's police photograph when he was arrested. But apparently, the First Lady, I think for the first time, I spend a lot of time, I've studied the history of American First Ladies. To my knowledge, Melania is the only First Lady who's actually turned her photographs into a money-making thing. In fact, I think this past year, Getty has paid her $1 million in photo rentals. But she writes into the contract that the story has to be favorable to her or else no dice. And so she's making a bit of money. Maybe what would you call that? Pin money or something?
I think I think it's getting ready money.
Getting ready.
Getting ready money.
Her products, she has a number of products that she sells, and they haven't released what she's making since she became First Lady. But when I investigated her for my book on Donald Trump a few years ago, she wasn't making the royalties of Ivanka Trump with her cosmetics, her shoes, her whatever. But she was pulling in at least $1 million a year in royalties on her products. So Melania also has products, but no figures have come out now about how much side money she's making. So it appears that even without Mr. Trump, she could earn a living.
Can I ask you a question? Have any other First Ladies done this?
Never. Never.
Yep.
The only one that was offered was Nancy Reagan, and she turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Nancy Reagan, even after she left the White House, was offered several movie roles because she certainly, in her age bracket, and she was offered certain movie roles, and she turned down all deals like that. And but apparently Melania is doing very well, and now she's not selling those lesbian photographs that she posed for that were widely. They're controlled. She's refused to endorse them in any way, but she doesn't own the rights to them. And many people now own she posed for some provocative pictures when she was unknown and before she met Mr. Trump.
Yes.
And unfortunately,
nothing surprises me about this whole situation. So we have probably 1 minute to say goodbye, but this has been, I am exhausted. You are fantastic. I learned so much today, and I'm so glad we talked about it. And I have to just talk to you personally about so many other things, but I thank you so much for your articles, for your radio, for our friendship. And I hope it's not too hot there, but I just would love to see you again. It's been so wonderful.
A cold wave is coming in New
right.
York, so we're going to cool off. But anyway, I've really enjoyed talking to you because
I did too.
I love to dig up things.
I know you do. I can't wait for the Hefner book. I'm so excited. Are we going to get that in August?
What's that?
Will we get the book in August?
Oh, no. I'm just submitting it in August.
Oh, okay.
It'll be... we're hoping now. It's been announced for an October release.
Okay.
And they're already taking
we have to go.
The cover's a bit provocative.
Oh, good. I'll get it on our cover once it comes out. Thank you, Darwins.